There we are. And I'll just let in someone who's in the waiting room currently. Welcome. Welcome to the launch. I've just pressed the record button just to let you know, where I'm going to introduce Diana and then we'll hear the poems. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me. I must say I have used Zoom 100 times recently, but this is the first time I've actually organised an event. So please bear with me. It's really exciting, really fun. Okay, now let me introduce Diana to you. Diana Durham, a very warm welcome, is a writer and a poet who's been involved in the collective life of intentional community in England, the United States and Canada over the past 30 years. In the 1980s, she was among a group who began to explore dialogue and the potential of groups to access a pool of collective intelligence with the late theoretical physicist David Bohm. And these ideas are explored in her non-fiction books, The Return of King Arthur, finishing The Quest for Wholeness, and the more recently published Coherent Self, Coherent World, a new synthesis of myth, metaphysics, and Bohm's implicate order. And I have to say, going off script, I knew Diana would be a wonderful poet, contact and friend when I realised that Coherent Self, Coherent World was published on the 27th of September last year, which is a very auspicious day because it's my birthday. So I knew all the signs were there. Diana is also the author of 4 poetry books: Sea of Glass, published by the Diamond Press London, To the End of the Night from Northwood Press, Maine, winner of their annual competition, Between Two Worlds, a collection of sonnets from Chrysalis Poetry UK, and of course Labyrinth, which we're launching tonight. Her debut novel, The Curve of the Land, is from Skylight Press, and she wrote, performed and co-produced an audio play retelling of the Grail myth called Percival and the Grail, which I believe is available on YouTube. She is a graduate of University College London with a BA in English Literature and was a visiting research associate at the Women's Studies Research Centre, Brandeis, in 2011. And Diana and her family lived for 24 years on the east coast of the USA before returning to Britain in 2019. So I'm going to hand over to you, Diana, to speak and read from your lovely book, Labyrinth. I'm particularly interested in the title, so I don't know if you can start off telling us a little bit about that, but over to you.
Great, thank you, Sarah. That's a lovely bringing us all together on this new and amazing and slightly terrifying technology. Yes, 24 years in New England is where we were based. And nearly all the poems in this collection are set in America. And the title, yes, a bit of context here. So the title, Labyrinth, obviously a labyrinth, its simplest form is a spiral. And the labyrinth spiral symbolizes the transforming movement from one state to another. In this collection, the labyrinth is my psychic journey from sort of old England, the old world, to New England, and the transformation I underwent as I slowly moved from homesickness, mainly, to a vision of the deeper truth of America. But the movement of a spiral can also mean the unfolding of the creative process as we experience it when we create something. And in the essay which accompanies this collection, I explore the creative process of writing in terms of a spiral, and I draw on other ancient symbols which come from the Kabbalah of the 4 forces in their sequence of water, air, earth, and fire. And I just want to briefly name that, a little bit of how I've experienced that, how I've thought about it. So water is the beginning of the cycle. We sometimes use the phrase beginner's mind, the gathering the waters of thought together. The second phase of force is air. That's when mental energy begins to stir, intimations and phrases start to sort of swirl in our minds. Earth, that's when a form, a draft starts to show up. And the fourth and last stage is the stage of ripeness. The fruits are ripe, something is finished. Now, these cycles show themselves in many other ways. And one of the most familiar, particularly to those of us who live in the Northern Hemisphere, is of course the cycle of the 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, autumn. Now in New England, this sequence of seasons, seasonal changes is more dramatic than it is in Old England. Certainly in my experience it was, particularly because of the contrast between snowy winters and very hot summers. And so the changes, you know, they affect your life, and so they tend to dominate in consciousness more. And I realized that nearly all a significant number of these poems in this collection referenced or were about the seasons. Not all of them, but a good deal of them. So then I decided to structure the book around them, and beginning more or less in December and ending in the autumn, or fall, as it is called in America. And of course, fall in New England is famous for the maple trees, sugar maples being the most dramatic, whose leaves turn vivid shades of orange, red, yellow, and they do look like the flames of the fire cycle burning up before they fall. So I'm going to begin. I'm going to follow somewhat that cycle. Well, because the book kind of follows it anyway. And I'm going to begin by reading a poem about snow. So it's the winter time, which is the season that corresponds to the beginning quiet part of the creative cycle. And that's when we almost have to abandon ourselves to being unable to act, because we need to be acted upon. And that's not always easy to do. Page 30, oh, sorry, I'm telling you the page reference.
Quite helpful.
Page 34. Okay. So it's called Nothing to Be Done About It. The snow lies across the night. Through the black branched trees we see it from the roadside as we pass. As we wind on our accustomed way, we see the snow still glowing light within the dark. Around the square homes, 4 paned windows lit, the snow is mounded, deep and white, a winter's rain inflated feather light, now solid. Nothing to be done about it, except shoveling, except the big trucks cutting and dumping it, raising mini Appalachians. Along the streets, its billion-fold 6-pointed stars form layers of filthy grey encrusted black, even like this. And even though its crystals have cycled through eons, the snow is present. All shapes evened in its spread. Strip mall, colonial, chain link, tree clump. Parts that once fit together in a pastoral, others the promise of that, but sprawled unlinked, shaded sad by trees, buffeted by cars. It always feels uneasy when the past falters, when the new is unformed or brash or sweeps away or eats away what was. The car sails lined up along the country road, the former country road, the farm behind still struggling on, and you can only drive on along it over and over in a car, wondering about beauty, the harmony of old ways. But the snow, the terrible blanking snow, the blanketing of it, nothing you can do about it. Muffles whatever we used to think, wraps us in a kind of sleep, tells us a story as we succumb, of stars recycling slowly into summers we will live within again. The snow spread out through the night that is so full, so incomplete, as it joins its own dark sky, so saturated, full of quiet presence, changing. So now, so the winter months in New England, and we lived in the state of New Hampshire, are the serious winter sets in after Christmas, January to March. But April is still often cold. Wet snow can still fall. And many New Englanders fly to Florida during these winter months. And once we escaped what was a very chilly spring by driving down to South Carolina. Part of what is so amazing about America is that you can drive from freezing cold winter, it's the same country, and you just go south, you hit sort of spring, and then you go on, you just keep going and come to summer. It's really amazing. But the bit I'm going to read of the poem is actually the last part. It's the last part of a longer poem about that trip. And this part is called Driving North, and it's recounting some of our return journey. Driving back to spring, the sky is pale mist, staves of telephone wires strung out for miles along its edge. The sun, a yellow smudge, heaped everywhere else, blue-gray smoke, then a rain burst cratering the windscreen. Turn off, we hit Econo Lodge, days in, 1 billion hamburgers sold, yellow arches, orange Dunkins, gas stations, space-age landing zones, the shout and jostle of giant primary fonts confusing our dual-lane slow chug through the chain strips. An obese black girl smiles kindly behind the counter of the freezer-lined, flies fried on the blue grid roadside snack shack, cannot tell us what road we are on, just somewhere in Berkeley County, and we understand because really we could be anywhere. Later, in our bid to find the thin bridge-linked strip of East Virginia, we meet her negative, dark roots, bleached, blonde, pale girl, hands hatred with his change to the tall young man in shiny white sports, everything ahead of us in the short line, his dark face lost in its mask of hurt, dazed into monosyllables as he pays for gas and cigarettes, shuffles out, and I am suffocating in all this space. The glare of surfaces, the heat haze, slow release, unease, settling through the very air, fallout from some unreasoned inside snare that is no longer even really there. So I keep looking over there to my notes. They're here. So one of the themes in that poem, Driving North, and they're also touched on a little bit in the poem about snow, is the urban landscape of America and the way car dealerships, strip malls, and fast food franchises have spread along many a former country road throughout the whole of America, as well as throughout the city suburbs. And these places are part of what I feel is a kind of nowhere land, and they breed isolation and alienation because they've been built without any thought for aesthetics or for community. And for me, another example of nowhere land were the endless, often quite prosperous suburban neighborhoods that spread for miles but have no centers, no shops, no pubs, no place to meet and be a community. And for all these reasons, we were very thankful for the small coastal city that was our home, which was an old settlement and did have a centre, and why I wrote this this next poem, which is called Walk In Somewhere and Return. We're lucky. We have shops, bars, a town square, somewhere to walk to. It's not like that everywhere. Windows tinted, the vans slide past, no need to wave. Shuttles to Starbucks, soccer from the set-back shades of houses that would like to be mansions. Evergreens, ornamental maples, mono lawns, swing set optional, hoop and the double garage required, where the kids' social must-haves are in charge to survive. And it could be woodland, but isn't. And it could be a neighborhood, but it isn't. Too close and too far apart. And the dogs all bark. They have a lot to say, but with you there's no spark. Just call, hi, how are you? And move past smilingly complete. I don't know how a people grew to be so frozen lonely. Not even nosy, they don't really want to know the price you paid, what you won't do for a living anymore. They don't want to know you at all. At the very most, they'll list you their best boasts. Eyes restless, averted while they talk, like those Christmas update letters that are reports of all the good news and none of the rest, selling to you like a PR receptor site. Meaning is important. Friendship between people, places where you can walk in somewhere and return, spaces that have a center where we can learn the pattern of ourselves, both all together and all alone. This next poem is called Philosopher'S Stone. It's a short poem. Philosopher's Stone. I've been turning over in my heart, like a smooth pebble in the corner of my pocket, the thing itself. It is not seen, but I can feel it, sure, whole, real as river-polished translucency. In the darkened anteroom or threshold, the thing itself, shining into the prism world, whose tumbled contents, cupboards and vistas take on then this commonplace, new marvel of stone. When we first moved to the US, we lived for a few months in Manhattan, and this next poem, which is quite a long poem, begins in the plane on our descent into JFK Airport. And you know, one of the themes is just the huge scale of the US. As someone coming from this tiny island, it's quite mind-blowing. It's called Planet America. As the plane lowered through clouds, they swirled for a brief moment open above the Manhattan fuel cells, the banked captive conglomeration sprawl. Queens, although I didn't know it, had not driven yet through the urban highway intersections called centers, had not left the train, walked for donuts the dust blank hostile main street of Jamaica Plains, where the girl, 2 decades younger, 4+ sizes older, spooned 6 heaps of sugar in her coffee. But I got a feel of vastness, of something measureless that she might be lost in, where dimension works differently, like those special effects showing endlessness, druid armies, metropolises. Some huge system anyway was opening up its hatches, guiding me in. When they closed over, the former world would pass away. This wasn't just another country I was coming into, but another planet with structures and substructures beyond my frame of reference, and I felt more tired than excited. Holding my baby girl in my arms, felt as if this might be a lot more than I had bargained for, that all the old small ways of seeing could falter, and I would have to make the culture of meaning over again. And when later on I tried, found different ways to blend, people were kind to Thomas and my daughter, but couldn't see where we had come from, not sure how relevant to raw mainstream America. And it was difficult amid the skyscraper chasms, the status smiles, the frantic, serious pace to measure anything, to find proportion, explain why small town views aren't wise enough either. One gun shop, 8 selectmen and a church. Or tell the mad tea party why it was too much, too sweet, too big, too empty to ever be filled. A long time afterwards I landed, warmed on sun-bathed stone, soothed by bright dark snowmelt shining over smoothed out granite slabs. My kids playing in the pools and water curtains, knowing there was not just one mountain range, but thousands. Their rivers, regions emptying out around, felt how this land might be made from extremes, how its local large-scale expanse makes us view difference, gives us space to be new. Held the mica flashed stones, pink, pale aqua, honey, owned in this generous nature and abundance I had called for all my life, waiting for me, felt how emptiness can only be filled from within. The pools and water curtains I'm describing at the end there are part of the White Mountain region in New Hampshire. And actually the cover picture is actually of that specific spot in the White Mountains. It's a river system the riverbed is almost just made of huge slabs of granite, and there are these pools carved into it by the force of water. So beautiful. And it happens to be called Diana's Baths. And we went there quite often. And as I say, very beautiful, as are many natural areas of America. However, it took time for us when we first drove up to the White Mountain region, which was only a 2-hour drive from where we lived. But it was difficult. It took us time to find our way in, because the main route into the region is lined with outlet mouths and motels where people come to stay and shop as much as they come and see the sights. And this again was very different for me. It was I couldn't quite put those things together. And so, you know, throughout this time, this journey of mine, there was this movement back and forth within me between feeling homesick, feeling disoriented, alienated, particularly by the urban landscape, and on the other hand, finding connections, finding the beauty of the natural world. And of course, life is often like this. We move from one side to the other in the spiral, and we alternate between confusion and chaos and order and beauty or coherence. That this is actually the movement of life, although when it's very extreme, it's quite challenging. Now, as I'm sure there's many on the call know this, and I mentioned it earlier, but labyrinth walking is a form of divinatory ritual. And supposedly there's a question that we want to ask, we want an answer to it. And so we have this question in our minds. We walk round one way, let's say it's anti-clockwise, and we're kind of moving out of the past, and then we come to the center, and we've stepped into the present, and then we turn and walk around the other way, I'm doing this wrong way around, clockwise, so moving into the future. And in the process, very often, if we do this properly with a sort of meditative depth, an answer will begin to percolate in our minds. And actually, there's some interesting thoughts now about the brain. The brain actually has this interesting way of sort of almost doing the same thing. It's not quite through the two hemispheres see life very differently. They process life very differently, and then they come to a new blend out of the interaction between the two. And this collection is named after a very long poem, that obviously called Labyrinth, and that poem deals most directly with this particular sort of psychic journey of myself and my search for the answer to the questions that I kind of mulled over, which were along the lines of, what's the meaning of this new world? How will I be changed by it? And will I find home again? And I'm just going to read the first part of this poem. Labyrinth. A labyrinth is an indented swerve inwards and out. A leaf skeleton, carving, pale X-ray of ribbed lungs, curving path around one hemisphere and through the mirroring other, which is not like our reflection, although backwards almost the same, because for one thing, it can be a different scale, a wild west, a wilderness, a New England that takes what the other was and runs it around another way. The hallmark of Manor House stamped across landscape, psyche, English lit, mimicked in clapboard, and passed out across the frost-hard, stone-hard first land, becomes along the lonely long frontier space for red canyons, monumental valleys, and mistakes. Feeder roads to strip malls, sign forests, glass acreage for let, rows of empty homes. The full shape is not in the view, though, not even well represented in miniatures and smaller tokens of itself. You must get up high and fast to see the serpent coiled on the mound, understand why the one does not open to the other's key. Crossing over and back and finding the balance, or just stepping out again, is a freedom so light it needs no marking, so profound its trophy can only be awarded me myself, worn like a piece of artisan jewelry bought by myself for me, hanging in the center through the rainbow of the thymus, glowing like a rainbow bridging gold, the one world turning back into the other. That one of the little references there mimicked in clapboard. Where we lived in New England, there were many sort of mansions that were exactly like some of the sort of great country houses of England, but instead of being made of stone, they were all made of clapboard. It was so, again, it's one of these strange, it's like similar, but it's not quite the same, like a dream. Things were similar, but not quite the same. So in all this time that this collection sort of spans, I was evolving ideas. It sounds like I'm sort of just talking about the landscape, but I was thinking about much more than that, about the whole culture. And the second of my nonfiction books, Coherent Self, all this thought press was kind of evolving through me, and it got shadowed in some of these poems. And a part of the thought process was about what art is, why it's important, and that its origins are the origins of art are mysterious. It's not just intellectual. It comes from somewhere invisible in us. And this, I wrote a short poem called that kind of plays a little bit with the art, with the thought of what art is. It's nice and short. art. If you find that luminous blue bubble, whose irregular roundness can wobble and squeeze between things, yet still hold its shape, it will roll over your affairs and escape, like an eye, a fluid lens, a droplet that magnifies with no fixed comment yet on its curved, distorted focus. It must be made well, constructed out of itself in such a way that it has no edges, no unraveling seams, but is endless and flares up translucent like a blue flame, answering with the wholeness of its name.
That's such a lovely poem, Diana. I thought I'd interrupt to say that. You said it was one of those poems that just
I didn't
emerged.
know yes,
yeah, it's lovely to hear it. Yeah.
So the next poem, talking about the process and the creative process as well, the process of change, it marks a shift in my own experience. And there's a references in it to love and to the sun, and both of those could be said to be part of the fire cycle, a completion as the spiral turns and lifts us into another level. We undergo transformation. We see things anew. Something shifts. Our heart opens. In this poem, it's about that. It's about the kind of healing. See clear through to the sun. Well, I understand now how beauty is a flow that springs invisibly, but is fed by all things. How transparency is first, and what glass would bring, and how all its words must be constantly renewed, cleaned of obligations from their careless past. To speak simply is to be this complex embrace, reclaim the headwaters, pass through the liquid face, soften in the wet darkness my hardening gaze, and see inside the pitted surface was my own. With it dissolves bitterness, irritation, the perplexed disappointment of looking without finding, so that feeling moves out away from doubt, and I know, because this beauty flows, that it can take form. And therefore all we have to do is plan a temple to it. These lines may begin some part of its foundation, whatever can impart a benediction, the only way we ever build what we love, when this spills easily over, and that space out there, those hills, the tower and town square, become the place that matches, catches, and turns back through us its meaning. Like sunlight on canyon walls, like faces we can see clear through to the sun. So yeah, so when I was putting this together, I was reflecting on the poems. How are we doing? Oh yes. It sounds a little bit like, as I said, that I'm just focusing on place, but we lived through very interesting times there. When we arrived, it was that Clinton, and whatever else Clinton did, he did balance the books a little bit in America, and it was quite a kind of bountiful time, it seemed. And then we got the George Bush years, and 9/11, the Iraq, the Afghan, and then the Iraqi wars, and then 2008. Was that still Bush? Anyway, that was the crash. And through also personal interactions, you know, that there was something going on in this culture. There's something going on in kind of raw tooth and claws capitalism, where values were starting to get really deeply undermined, and it is quite alarming, and it's difficult to live with, and to come to a place of feeling not just wanting to hide, but to take it on in a certain sort of way and allow it to be transformed, even if it's just in oneself. Because I felt towards the time, this wasn't, by the way, why we decided to come back, but before I knew that before I moved, I had to come to love and bless America. I had to come and see what it was about, its deep, its depth. And that, again, this collection, to some degree, is about that. So apparently, the English phrase of medicine man, it translates only part of the meaning of that role, which in the native language, and there must have been several different languages, and I don't know exactly the evolution of it, but apparently there were meanings along the lines that are similar to our words for mystery and magic. And so I think perhaps it's more, the word is more like, the word shaman actually would be closer to what it means. And this next very short poem is about the mystery of America, which I believe compels those who live there to become shaman-like themselves. That's the answer to living in this enormous place, this enormous psychic and physical place, is to be able to fly, to fly in the spirit, as it were. Um, 65. Mystery medicine. The plane wheels around you, marking 4 directions, following its communion with the constant sun. Wind over the mountains, eagle on the thermals through the canyon where the river runs. Earth and sky speak still to one another. If you have fallen, if you cannot hear or read the signs in this expanse, the spirit will turn you inside out insane. And I'll end with another short poem, which also ends sort of ends part of the collection and takes us back to the White Mountains or to some of the views from that region. Kingdom of the Infinite. Look anywhere at a leaf, a small inconsequential pebble on a beach, an unguarded human face. What is seen, if you can see it, is beauty, which you might find first as pattern, shape, for its nature is of things related, and an equivalence with another order of itself, and even more poignantly, an exchange between these, like the exchange between faces that light up, and from there, suddenly, like the view that takes you breathless by surprise, rounding the corner of a gradual climb, the inlet, wooded hills, their further blue, an expansion of both, the world, real, formed, even this one part of which you may never walk entirely through, and a largesse that will never entirely leave you, the larger possibility at the brink of which all will always be poised. And that ultimately, that's, as I've kind of said, that's the vastness of America, its limitless possibility, is the key to its transcendence and beauty, and that it demands from those who live there ultimately that, including myself, very much myself, that we become aware of that deeper identity in ourselves in order to live in such a large space with such extremes. So that's some of my story.
Yeah. That's wonderful, Diana. Thank you so much. What a privilege to hear you read them. I mean, I've got to know the poems with the working with you on the book, but how wonderful, to have all these the sort of the spoken resonances in the poems and between the poems. I really appreciated it, and what a wonderful collection. It's got myth and history and place and sort of personal lyric and thought. Really enjoyed the selection. Thank you. Yeah. I haven't actually got any further comments in the chat box apart from my own inviting people to put comments in the chat box. So if at this point anyone wanted to chip in with a comment or question, you'd be most welcome. And then I'll say a few things to round up. We're a smallish group, so feel free to dive in or type in the chat or do whatever you wish. Unmute yourselves.
Well, this is Jeff here in Auckland, New Zealand.
Oh, hi, Jeff. Wow.
Wow.
And Linda is next door in the living room, and I'm in the office
yes.
of our house. Yeah. And of course, it's spring here.
Oh, yes. That's
yeah. It's quite beautiful. And it's so good to see you again, Diana, after all this time.
Yes.
And we're both looking a little older.
Yes.
And really good to meet you, Sarah, as well.
Nice to meet you
we all
too.
feel like it all feels like kin on these Zoom calls, doesn't it? Yeah, everyone. And it's been wonderful to wind my way into the center of your labyrinth, and only to find that I will now wind myself out. And it's all the same thing. Life goes on.
Yeah. What a lovely way of putting it. I love it.
I intend to be around a long time and see the cycle through to victory with you. Thank you so much, Diana, and thank you, Sarah, for facilitating.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Jeff. That's a wonderful comment. It makes me think of the whole process of reading as well. Reading a poetry collection meditatively, you sort of walk into it and then you have to come out of it, but you're changed somehow. So yeah, it's a wonderful analogy. Thank you. Anyone else, any questions or comments?
Hi, this is Elizabeth Doucette. I still live here in New England, in Maine, actually, just over the border from where Diana lived all those years. And yes, living here, you have to become a shaman.
You do.
Yeah.
Which of course you are, Liz.
So great to see you, Diana, and we'll be in touch. Lovely, lovely book, just beautiful.
Thank you.
Hello from another Diana.
Diana.
It's lovely to see you again too. It's been a long time. I love your use of the seasons and the feeling of the labyrinth and the combination of those visually trying to mesh in me. And I come from just north of Denver, Colorado, in the middle of the country of the US. And I would say that I'm very touched by the way you see things and have seen America. Originally, I come from Canada, but I feel very much a part of this country. I love this country. And there are things that are happening in this country that can be considered very disturbing, concerning, and yet underneath it all is America, the real America. And we're having to work through all this, and we're not alone in the world. We tended to start the 4 years previous to this president have been very much self-centered in us, me, America first. And to see through your eyes the beauty of the country itself, but also knowing again we're part of a larger whole, the beauty of this world. Here we are in fall, autumn, and in New Zealand, you're in spring. And to be together in the moment and on this Zoom with both seasons right here in us is kind of magical too. I could go on talking, but thank you for the beauty of your words, the vision that it carries for all of us in different ways in our lives. I am excited to buy one of your books and read the whole thing. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Diana. Wonderful. It's lovely to hear from you.
Did I just say something?
Yes.
I just wanted to say there's so much rich material. It's difficult to capture it all in a quick listening. I'm looking forward to reading them. But I particularly enjoyed your driving north. And the idea of, as you drive through the country, you drive through the seasons.
Yes.
And coming back, and that sense when you're going along the highway and the sort of monosyllabic, you know, the bleached blonde dark roots, snack shop, you know, blue gray link bridge, the words that you were throwing in there really gave me that sense when you're going down the road and the cars will as you go along and everything is changing. So I just wanted to say that one particularly struck my ear, but I'm looking forward to reading them all.
Brilliant.
Great, thank you.
Great. Well, let me just make a valiant attempt to share my screen. There we are. And to say, for those of you who want to get a copy of the book, it's just available on Amazon at the moment. I know there are pros and cons to that, but because I'm only a tiny publishing company, it's been, I really needed to sort of have this simple format at first. So at the moment, the book is available on Amazon.co.uk or .com or wherever your nearest Amazon is. You can get it as an ebook or as a lovely print book with a glossy cover that I really hope that you will enjoy. So you can just go to Amazon and order it at the moment, or if there are any problems with that, of course you can email me and I'm sure I'll be able to help you. And here's my little publicity spiel, which will only be half a minute, if that. But if you do buy a copy and you feel that you'd like to write a super brief review, either on Amazon or Goodreads, you know, one of those sites that encourage micro reviews, it does help. It helps enormously with all sort of small presses and poetry presses. So, and I've been delighted to be able to share a review that's already up there that I didn't ask for, Diana didn't ask for. It's just come up there, and it's a 5-star review. So it's just really, really lovely and rewarding to hear if you've enjoyed it, and it helps other readers as well. So that's something that you can do. This is just a bit of fun, but if you fancy supporting the book beyond the bounds of the literary text, we have mugs, we have tote bags, we have a few other strange gift items, all available on Zazzle. Zazzle is a very big store, but you can go onto zazzle.co.uk and search for Labyrinth or Amethyst Review, or again, if there are any problems, you're welcome to email me and I can point you in that direction. And this might be the time actually to say that the winner of the free copy of Amethyst and the tote bag, as illustrated here, is somebody I'm very relieved to see is present, and it's Diana Durham. So Diana, we poet Diana and myself devised a numerological kind of aleatoric device to pick out a certain number of the registered Eventbrite participants, and it's your name, and I'm absolutely delighted because it was the first choice, and I've got some fail-safe mechanisms for finding a different person if you weren't there, but I'm delighted that you're there. So I have your email address from the Eventbrite list, so I'll drop you an email, and if you'd like to send me your address, I'll get these delightful items sent on to you. And you can be a Labyrinth ambassador in Colorado, as you said. Yes. You were. Thank you so much. Okay, so I will email you about that. And it's been lovely to have this launch. I really appreciate everybody who's come, and Diana for reading so absolutely beautifully. It's just a couple of other things you can do. You don't have to spend any money doing this at all, but I just wanted to say that Amethyst Press is a tiny micro publisher with ambitions for great things, especially concerning writing and poetry and spirituality and the sacred in the widest possible sense. My online presence is Amethyst Review, which some of you may have come across already, but it's online. It's just an online blog journal. I've run it since the beginning of 2018. It's a free online journal featuring new writing, engaging with the sacred poetry, short pieces of non-fiction and of fiction, of life writing, some book reviews, including a really wonderful review of Diana's book, which was up on the 1st of October by another poet, Irina Kuzminski. So I do recommend you go and have a look, if only to read that. But the web address is just amethystmagazine.org. You can subscribe entirely free and get daily notifications. And I've got a small but growing presence on Facebook and Twitter, again, if you want to support and follow, entirely free to do. And it would be delightful to have some more people to support us there, if you wish to do that. So thank you very much for that. And I think that is more or less the hour come to its conclusion. Just to say thank you so very much, everyone, for attending. What a treat.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah,
great working with you.
Thank you.
Really
Let me just stop the share. So yes, I mean, it's been really, this has been our project. It's one of those sort of things that's kept me sane and creative and hopeful over this very, very strange period of time, last year, a couple of years that we've had.
It's just very important to have places where so many people are writing poetry and other things about the sacred, about their inner experience, about the larger aspect of who we are and all of those values. But there are very few mainstream outlets. In fact, they've all almost died away. And so this is to me, it's a very significant beginning of a new possibility.
No, it's really, actually really noticeable. I've been absolutely inundated with submissions last year. I've actually closed submissions for a few months now, even though I'm still publishing something every single day, but I've closed for just a few months because the quantity and the quality of people's writing from all over the world is just engaging with the non-material, or at least the material seen from a spiritual perspective, has been quite something. And there are publications out there, but perhaps not so much in the UK and not so much free to access online. So I was very pleased to kind of set that up and see where it leads. Lovely, thank you. I'm getting some wonderful comments now, actually, which I will share with you, Diana, after the event. But lots of appreciation from Annabelle, reading Overstory at the moment. Linda, thanking you for the poems. Dorothy thanking us for the session, and Gillian, thank you so much, everyone. We're kind of out of time. I'm not particularly standing on ceremony, but just thank you once again for coming. And I hope you do all manage to get hold of Diana's book and read it, because it's a treasure. So there we are.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I'll say goodbye to everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very
much. Good night or goodbye. Good afternoon.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Very good.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Melissa. Right.
Oh, bye, I am here.
I know, this is where I want to hand around the wine, but I can't.
Yeah. That's the drawback with Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well. There we are. Okay.
So
Fantastic, Diana. Really well done.
and you.
I was bit, well, I was worried. Oh, thank you.
You're so at ease, but you were at ease, but you were, everyone felt safe, you were in control, not control, but you knew what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. No,
that's my teacher hat on, I think.
Yeah, well, all that certainly helps, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but
so
thank you.
19 signed up and 10. That's a big drop.
Yeah. Yes, there were 1 or 2 people. There was someone called DD who kept coming in and then dropping out. So I wonder if they were having technical difficulties. But who knows? Who knows? Apparently, it's not uncommon. And people think, oh, I can catch a recording later. And
and I know one friend. He said to me, he signed on right off the bat, and he said, "But I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it," kind of thing. So I knew he told me that.
Yeah.
So that's why it's great that we've recorded it.
It's fine. We have. Oh, in fact, I can now stop. I can now stop recording.